Welcome back to Sustainability Matters. Today, we're taking a closer look at the water pollutants affecting us right here in New York City. While New York currently boasts excellent drinking water quality, challenges persist to ensure its protection from industrial discharge, sewage overflow, and urban runoff, which also affects the waterways that surround us. Today, we are joined by experts to explore the state of New York City's water, from contamination concerns to innovative solutions that are underway. Before we talk with our guests, let's turn to Andrew Falzone for a broader perspective on the topic.
After sunlight, water may be the most essential piece of the puzzle that maintains life on Earth. About 71% of the Earth is covered in water, but 97% of it is undrinkable salt water. Another 2% is locked in ice caps and glaciers. That leaves just about 0.5% of the world's water for human consumption, according to the UN, which also says that 2 billion people worldwide don't have access to safe drinking water. The UN also predicts sea level rise will cause saltwater infiltration of freshwater, further reducing what's available for us to use. Here in the US, the average home uses about 50 gallons per day, and since just 0.5% of the Earth's water is drinkable or potable, protecting it from pollution and contamination is important. The New York City drinking water supply is known as the New York Watershed and located on the mainland of southeastern New York State. The Watershed Agricultural Council works to protect the water supply. The New York City water supply system has 19 reservoirs and 3 lakes. The watershed is just under 2,000 square miles, or just over 1.2 million acres. The system provides 1 billion gallons of water every day that's consumed by 9 million residents, which is about half the population of New York State. Unlike most municipal water supplies, which are filtered, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation says the city's watershed is the largest unfiltered drinking water supply in the U.S. In addition to the 5 boroughs, it also serves Ulster, Orange, Putnam, and Westchester counties. Considered the champagne of drinking water, maintaining naturally high quality standards saves the city an ocean of cash on filtration. State DEC estimates filtration costs would be about $8 to $10 billion just to build a filtration facility, and then about $1 million a day to operate it. While the watershed is naturally clean, it's not perfect. One problem is sediment. In this case, fine particles of rock and dirt. The sediment can transport pathogens and make filtration and disinfection harder. Also, excess nutrients, especially phosphorus, can cause algae blooms, which lead to issues with water odor, taste, and color. With so many farms and forestry operations around the reservoirs, the Watershed Agricultural Council works with those around the watershed to contain and mitigate potential pollutants. Another crucial body of water in New York State is the Hudson River, which has some guardian angels of its own. Founded in 1966 by fishermen fed up with finding their daily catches soaked in oil, the Hudson River Fishermen's Association changed its name to Riverkeeper in 1986. Known for taking on major corporations like General Electric and ExxonMobil, the foundation has gone all the way to the Supreme Court in its efforts to stop polluters and help rehabilitate the river. In fact, thanks to legal action of Riverkeeper and others, another guardian of the Hudson was created in 1981. The Hudson River Foundation shares its own and other research with policymakers to advocate for a science-based approach for river management. In 1987, the Harbor Estuary Program, or HEP, was created by the Environmental Protection Agency, and the foundation was tasked with overseeing it. The Harbor Estuary is a huge swath of waterway that touches all 5 boroughs, New Jersey, and the lower Hudson Valley. Both organizations have been instrumental in cleanup of the Hudson River, particularly polychlorinated biphenyls, or PCBs, which are highly carcinogenic. The Hudson River was so polluted that it was designated a Superfund site by the EPA in 1984. Superfund is the name of a federal cleanup program created in 1980 and overseen by the EPA. It allows the agency to clean up abandoned toxic sites and force polluters to pay for the cleanup. There are currently 4 federal Superfund sites in New York City. While PCB cleanup is ongoing, a new chemical compound is making headlines. PFAS, or per- and polyfluoroalkyls, are known as forever chemicals because they break down very slowly. In April 2024, the EPA announced the first ever limits on acceptable levels of the chemicals in drinking water. Widely used, they're already present in the blood of most living things. The EPA says studies have shown that exposure to some PFAS in the environment may be linked to harmful health effects in humans and animals. I'm Andrew Falzone for Sustainability Matters on CUNY TV.
To discuss these issues, we have with us Dr. Jennifer Cherrier, a leading earth and environmental sciences professor at CUNY's Brooklyn College and founder of Waterway Ecologics, with over 27 years of expertise in aquatic ecosystems and innovative solutions for water resource sustainability. And Rosana Pedra Nobre from the New York, New Jersey Harbor and Estuary Program, a dedicated expert driving water conservation efforts with the Hudson River Foundation. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming today. So we've just heard about the main sources of water pollution in New York City's waterways. So let's just start with, how does that impact our drinking water?
Sure. So one pollutant that we're concerned about is harmful algal blooms. Basically, what happens is we put fertilizer down on our lawns or in our gardens or in agricultural land. And when a storm event happens, right, the rain pushes out the nutrients and it goes into our waterways. Once it's there, the algae flourish, right? It can become toxic, which has direct implications to human health as well as pets that interact with that water. So really, we don't see this right now as an issue in our region for our saline and brackish waters, but certainly in our freshwater and drinking water sources, we are seeing harmful algal blooms becoming an issue. Both states in New York and New Jersey actually have created ways in which individuals can reach out if they see what they think is an algae bloom and help identify or inform the state that it's occurring, so that way actions can be taken. And there's organizations like Riverkeeper who have been great about really trying to get local knowledge about drinking water source protection and informing the public of what the issues are around drinking water. So we have a lot of good resources to really help inform the pollutants that we're concerned about.
Yeah, and here in New York City, we're lucky because our water comes from the Delaware, Catskill, and Croton watersheds, which are protected somewhat. They could still possibly get fertilizers in them, but they're forested. Luckily, our drinking water won't be impacted by the pollutants that are in our coastal waters and in our waterways here.
Are there things that people should be looking out for?
Yeah, so especially in some of the reservoirs across the estuary, we certainly see, some of them aren't as protected or as, filled, like surrounded by forest. So sometimes, especially in some of our intense rain events, we've seen, walls fall down from those barriers that are supposed to protect them. So if ever you are near a reservoir, or if you see people swimming in your reservoir, definitely call the local authorities, let them know, so that way the proper channels can be addressed.
And how do these pollutants, or are there other pollutants, how do they impact the waterways where we want to swim or boat or fish or even just walk our dogs?
Yeah, sure. So the Clean Water Act of '72 has done, I think, a tremendous job about making federal, state, and local governments, as well as local utilities, and really addressing the water quality issues here in the Harbor Estuary. Our State of the Estuary report, we're certainly seeing, 30-year, 40-year long-term trends of improving water quality throughout the estuary. But that's not to say that it's true for all of the estuary. We're still seeing issues in some of our water bodies like the Passaic or the Hackensack, where we're still seeing impacts of pathogenic bacteria and low dissolved oxygen occurring. That really is being driven by our combined sewer overflows that we do have here in our harbor, both in New York and New Jersey. So basically, we're really talking about, right, like our toilets, our showers, our sinks, right, are all connected to the same pipeline that our catch basins are in our streets. And so on a dry day like today, everything works smoothly. It all goes to the wastewater treatment plant and gets treated. During a rain event, and as climate change, continues to intensify our storms and increase the volume of water, we're certainly seeing, an impact on the amount of volume that our current infrastructure can handle. So once we've tapped out our current pipelines, right, like it needs to go somewhere. So it actually overflows directly into our local water bodies. So here in the estuary, we have, over 400 or so, I think, combined, right, just about outfalls. So every storm event, we're still having a lot of combined sewer overflows, which, are releasing fecal matter into those waters, right? So we're still reducing people's ability to really be able to fish or swim in a lot of the estuary.
What are some of the solutions at Brooklyn College? How are you starting to take a look at that, and what are some of the...
So I work a lot with New York City DEP, and also through the Science and Resilience Institute at Brooklyn College. And we're going to need all the tools in the toolbox, so we need to enhance our gray infrastructure systems. We're still not going to be able to deal with all the water that's going to be coming, especially with climate change and more intense storms that we're going to be having. So the city's using more green infrastructure. The city just rolled out the cloudburst management program, which is going to be really great. So what cloudburst is it's just intense, high precipitation, high volume storms that happen episodically. And in the summer we have, about 3 major storms each month. And these nuisance storms, or these what the cities are calling kind of everyday storm events now, are really what are causing the problems. So the green infrastructure is putting bioswales. I think there's about 13,000 assets, rain gardens around the city. You probably see them when you walk your dog. But those are just tiny little postage stamps, so we can't really expect a tiny little postage stamp to do what a whole landscape used to do. So now the city's thinking about it more collectively and thinking about a whole suite of gray and green infrastructure types of approaches in neighborhood hotspots where there's a lot of flooding. Could be a pocket park that can act as a sponge. It could be big storage tanks underground. We're hoping for more nature-based design to be happening, because that also enhances our urban livability, decreases urban heat island effect.
It also actually is another great avenue for local organizations like the Rain Coalition and folks like Newark Dig, who are also trying to drive the maintenance of these green infrastructure assets. So really trying to get local community members to develop and be part of a green workforce. So it has many other advantages besides making our cities greener.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. And I think the challenge for the cities too is that generally they're able to maintain big, huge wastewater recovery facilities,
right,
and it's all in one place. But once you have this distributed type of water management, it provides an opportunity actually to engage the communities and to grow that green workforce that we really need to do it. And then, other solutions too for talking about harmful algal bloom events. We have them in our urban lakes, not necessarily because of fertilizers, but because we add phosphate to our drinking water so that we don't get leaching of lead into when we drink our water. And so we have these microcystis blooms, these blue-green algae that look like paint in the water. There are fish kills in those lakes. And when the microcystis blooms are growing, it's very problematic because the toxins volatilize, and so it can cause respiratory problems, impacts the fish and wildlife. And then sometimes when those blooms are really, really big, it doesn't even look like it's water. It looks like it's grass.
Like you walk on it.
And you can't. So they've had some problems with that. And they're not in all of our lakes, but the city and city parks are also working on that. We installed one of my systems in Prospect Park to act kind of like a Brita filter in the soil and to create the conditions that are just right for the plants and the bacteria to work, so that then the water can move through it naturally and clean the water, and you can have these systems underneath the ball fields, and so that we're removing that phosphate so that we don't end up with these harmful algal blooms in our lakes.
And so are there regulations that you feel are working? Are there regulations that you think we ought to be considering going forward? I mean, there's certainly a lot of work in that sort of bottom-up perspective in terms of bringing workers and our communities into these distributed solutions. Right. What about that sort of regulatory component?
Well, I think the reason why the city's working on it is because we're non-compliant with the Clean Water Act, right? And so there's a mandate to clean up our water by 2030. And so they tried to get there with gray infrastructure, and why they added the green infrastructure and now the cloudburst management is to try to get to that. But there's also the idea that we need to help the public manage their expectations for what can be done and understand what's going on, so each individual can understand how to not contribute as much water to the problem too, because as New York City's grown, the combined sewer system wasn't really built for the population density and the pavement that we have today. So we really need to, everybody needs to be part of the solution, at least be aware of it.
Yeah, the mandate with New York City, New Jersey, our combined sewer overflow communities there are all actually implementing long-term control plans that all are driven by the Clean Water Act. So there's definitely work both on the gray infrastructure improvements as well as the green infrastructure improvements, increasing capacity at our wastewater treatment plants to be able to manage more volume, right? That has all been great in what we have already achieved. The next area where we need to start looking at is in our smaller water bodies, our tributaries, where there's way more complications or more pollution or more impacts from various sources that we have to deal with, and added that they're not as well flushed as the Hudson River is. The Industrial Revolution was great economically for this region, but also left us a lot of toxic pollutants that we're still dealing with, and unfortunately it's at the cost of our overburdened communities. And so when we're thinking about recreation, right, it's not really accessible to everyone everywhere. So really looking at these targeted approaches in smaller water bodies, how we can manage them, open up access to our waterways. So when we're experiencing a heat wave, for example, right, like these overburdened communities have places to go out and cool off, right, and make it equitable across the estuary.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is it's funny, we live in New York City and we're surrounded by water, right? We're surrounded by more water than Florida, right? But yet the people that live here don't necessarily feel connected to the water. So I think the first step is to provide access to the water, start to educate people about the water. It's not something to fear, because our coastal waters and our waterways are cleaner than they've been in the last 100 years. We were just talking about the whales that are coming up into the harbor now, right? Yeah. Fisheries are coming back, but the shorelines are so hardened. It's like there's so much water, but it's so hard to get to, right? And so I think making that connection for the public is going to be key too, so that they can be part of the solution. Yeah. Because ultimately we vote. Yeah. Right? And we make choices. Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things we like to do is to involve students in our show, and so we've actually asked a couple of students some questions. So why don't we take one of those questions, because I think it relates to what we've been talking about.
Hello, my name is Rosa. How can I know if my water is safe to drink?
That's a great question. So EPA actually has this really neat website called mywaterway.epa.gov. You can literally go onto their site, type in your home address or your place of business or your school, and you can learn about the watershed that you live in, where your local water body is, what your drinking water source is, and it tells you everything about the health of that water body, how many violations might have been issued for the drinking water sources. It is a fantastic tool. They've made it pretty easy to use.
Yeah, from a local level, I think that it's really important for students like this to understand that we actually have some of the best water in the country and maybe even in the world. So there's really no reason to have bottled water here in New York City. That the water that's coming out of our tap is beautiful water. right? Yeah.
We've learned a lot more about the plastics that we
Yeah.
ingest from all the bottled water that folks
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, and
utilizing.
sometimes that bottled water isn't necessarily coming from a really clean source.
Yeah,
Right?
very often
Or your-
municipal water from.
Yeah, you're literally buying your filtered water back at you.
Yes, yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's take another student question.
Great.
Hi, my name is Jesse Ramos. Why do some communities and neighborhoods have more water pollution than others? And what can these neighborhoods do in order to help drive a change?
You sort of addressed that earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, so a little bit, right? Like it's definitely not equitable across the estuary, but there are a number of local organizations that are really driving and trying to increase local voices to be heard. There's organizations like South Bronx Unite, Coney Island Beautification Project, the Hackensack River Keeper. There's a number of them that are really trying to have people engage with them and really be out there in the community. So if there's, I would say find those organizations, engage with them. They usually run events. They have community science opportunities as well, which is great to do local science and get it utilized to make informed decisions.
Right. I do a program in Red Hook with my PhD students and with the Ready Center too, where we're rolling out a citizen science initiative where we're doing water quality measurements and phytoplankton monitoring. It's a NOAA partnership. And what we want to do is to get the data that we're collecting and get the process just right so that we can roll it out in multiple neighborhoods. And if we start doing that, then we can start bringing those into the classrooms so that the public schools can get involved, the public can get involved. And so once they do that and they see that the water pretty much most of the time, even Gowanus Harbor, is pretty good, and then they'll start to understand that when we do have these rain events, that's when we're having the degraded water quality.
Yeah, there's definitely been an increase, right, of like what we would say safer days, right, of swimming in our estuary than we've had in the past. So it's definitely those rain events that, is where you should be concerned or be a little more cautious around the water body. But when you're having a weeks long of straight sun, no rain, it's pretty clean.
So one of the cities that New York City works really closely with is the city of Copenhagen. And back in the 80s, you wouldn't want to go near the harbor water in Copenhagen. Right. But now I was just saying that it was one of my favorite things to do is to swim in the harbor. And they have a little signage that tells the population whether or not it's a good day to swim. It's a happy face, yellow face, or a green face. But that's kind of where I think we want to get to in New York City. And there are areas in the city that we can swim in the water.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's like about, how do we communicate that health risk, right? Can we make it easier for people to understand how clean the water is, when it's safe to interact with it, when it's not safe, right? I often think of, similar the Smokey the Bear, right, at the National Park Services, right? They tell you everything, like it's a dry day, how can we have that for our rivers? One of the efforts that we're trying to do at the Harbor Estuary Program has been working with the states in our shared water bodies of really talking about what a shared standard could look like for water quality. We currently have different standards for the same water body depending on what state you're standing in, which we're just making it even more confusing for everybody to understand, right? So if we can drive the conversations and the science to show, that yes, we can have shared standards, I think we make it just a little easier for people to really understand.
Yeah, the combination of the data and the communication of the data and having a level playing field across all the folks who need to understand it is a great vision.
This is an opportunity to envision what your future could look like, right? Like right now you don't have access to the water body, but would you want to? Like, could you see yourself kayaking? Could a kayaking business appear? Could you be boating out there? Could there be the harbor swimming like you do in Copenhagen here in the city, right? So it is a great opportunity for really re-envisioning what our relationship with water in the city could look like.
Or re-envisioning how the city could look, too.
Right.
They're clearly intertwined, right?
Yeah, you have to be able to dream. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both for coming today and for sharing all of your information and for what you're both doing to help make the city more swimmable and our waters more drinkable and helping to support the next generation of folks who can can do this work as well. So,
Great.
so
Thank you so much
Thank you.
for having us.
Please keep the conversation going and follow us or send us a message on social media. And be sure to join us next month for a special episode where CUNY students present their own mini documentaries about climate justice issues. This show will be hosted by their professor, Shelley Eversley, who is also the chair of the Black and Latino Studies Department at Baruch College. Don't miss it.